Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. It's because of our learning, we should have the basic English immediately. Should be a panacea. We're going to start at the Mishnah. Yeah, surprising pieces today. Iris says Salmana. Kohen Gadol, but not a Kohen Gadol. A Kohen is betrothed to a widow, which is perfectly fine. He's a regular Kohen. However, V'nesmanali is Kohen Gadol, but then he gets appointed to be the Kohen Gadol. What should he do? He already has this wife. It says, Yichnes, he's allowed to marry her. Yes, when was the prohibition for him that he has to marry, a Kohen Gadol has to marry a single woman, a woman that was never married? That's from the Erison, from the betrothal. He already did the betrothal. That's what would come out here. We had a discussion before. When was the main? How did we have this before? When was the main prohibition? Was it the marriage, the consummation of the marriage, or was it the betrothal? We had a discussion before, but this would clearly be a proof that the betrothal is the main time when we had that prohibition, and now that's already passed. So it doesn't have to do with him being married to an almana. It has to do with the act of marriage, that initial stage. That's what would come out, which is not going to fit with some things that we're going to learn later. So let's see. Ma'aser Yeshua ben Gamla. It's a familiar name because that's the same name of the person that started the schools. Remember, Ben Gamla schools? It's named after Yeshua ben Gamla. It was the one that the sages are very fond of. They say if not for him, the Torah would have been forgotten. He set up school systems everywhere. Originally, a father would teach the son. Then he set up for everyone should have schooling. So it's the same name. Not necessarily as the same person. Ma'aser Yeshua ben Gamla shekiddush Marta bas Baitas. Marta bas Baitas, I think, was that wealthy woman that was she the one that died because she stepped in a fig? And she was so delicate. Remember, she sent out her servant to buy bread. Came back, there's no wheat bread, there's only barley bread. Every time there was nothing, and then she went herself out, and she ended up stepping in a fig that was sucked on by Reb Tzadok, and she died because she was so delicate. So Reb Tzadok was someone that was fasting, and the doctors told him that the only thing he could do was to suck the juice of the fig. Is that the same woman? Is that the wealthy woman by the destruction? What does it say there?
In the siege of Yerushalayim, all her wealth was no avail, and she died of starvation.
Yeah. So that's her. So anyway, Yeshua ben Gamla marries Marta bas Baitas. And Minu HaMelech lias Kohen Gadol. The king appointed him to be Kohen Gadol b'kansa. And then, Kiddush. Kiddush means he was betrothed to her. And then after he was Kohen Gadol, he consummated the marriage, which seems to be, I guess she was a widow. I think that's what the Mishnah is telling me, right? That even though she was a widow, this still happened. Okay, next case is like this: Shemeres Yavam Shenaflu Lifnei Kohen Hedyot. This would be even more obvious, but it turns out it's not. Shemeres Yavam, a woman that's waiting for the levirate marriage. Why? Because her husband passed away. And her husband has a brother. Okay, the husband's a Kohen, the brother's a Kohen. So the brother then all of a sudden gets appointed Mismanali as Kohen Gadol. Now, he can't marry a widow. Even though he already did that rabbinic betrothal that it's possible that you can do for the levirate marriage, even though it's not necessary, but if it's done, something does take effect, if he gives her a ring or something, he's not allowed to marry her. Became a Kohen Gadol.
So this is saying that it's not being married.
Right.
The issue, it's the act of marrying.
Yeah,
That's the issue.
which it contradicts what we learned before. Why does it switch by Yibam than for a regular marriage? A regular marriage, we said there was nothing, and then by Yibam it switches. The Gemara doesn't resolve this issue.
Well, the mimer is kind of a quasi. Mimer is like a quasi kedushin, right?
Oh, that's probably the answer. Neil gave us the answer. He said Mimer is not a real kedushin. So he wasn't married, even though he had an attachment to her, because the brother passed away, and he did a rabbinic marriage, but he didn't do a
obligation, but it's not really a marriage. Is that
he didn't do an actual marriage that the Torah recognizes.
it's a levirate marriage? Would that be a
Yeah,
marriage? Though?
yeah, a levirate marriage is a marriage, but he didn't get his marriage started until he became the Kohen Gadol. Everything that he did before was all rabbinic.
After all of the things that have been done,
Yeah. Okay. What comes out is that it's not the issue of being married, it's the issue of getting married. And the question is, was it a good marriage or not? That has to do with if it was biblically recognized or just rabbinically recognized. Okay. Yeah.
I just wondering what the difference was.
What happens is when a man gives a woman a ring,
right.
So that's a betrothal. It's kedushin.
Right.
When a man gives the Yevama, the levirate marriage, he gives her a ring, the Torah doesn't acknowledge that. That's not because he's supposed to take over.
Right.
And
it's basically taking over as opposed to an actual.
Yeah, and so just giving the ring is nothing according to the Torah. You did nothing. So, but the rabbis do recognize that. They say, no, that is something that would require a get. So, but the Torah doesn't recognize that from the.
Right.
And so therefore, if he would be a Kohen Gadol and all he did was the mimer, that wouldn't have done anything. Okay. Tanarabanan. Stood in a Bryce Minayan Shamir says Salman How do you know that if he was betrothed to an almana, to a widow, and then he gets appointed to be a Kohen Gadol, that he's allowed to consummate the marriage? It says Kiyim Besulam Meyamav Yikachisha. Only a virgin he can marry a wife, can take a wife. That extra word wife is coming to tell me that there's one more that he could take. And that is the widow after that he was betrothed to before he became the Kohen Gadol, he can still marry her. Gemara says, if that's the case, so Shemeres Yavam Nami. Maybe that should include the levirate marriage that he had the obligation to marry her already from before he became the Kohen Gadol. It says Isha v'la Yevama. It says a wife. It doesn't say a Yevama. Now, that nuance over there tells me that there's a difference. Okay. Probably what it means is that the Zika is not strong enough. Okay, Maisa be Yeshua. There's a story with Yeshua. We said this is Yeshua ben Gamla. So it says over there, the wording is that Minahu, he was appointed. In, that's yes. Nisman alai. I don't know what the difference is in the grammar here, but apparently Nismana meant that he was worthy of it. And Mino means that he was appointed, but he wasn't worthy of it. Do they have the grammar in that? Like, do they write it differently? The two types of being appointed?
He appointed him, yeah, but he was worthy of being appointed. Yes, it said, I see a conspiracy.
Yeah. Okay, but first it says Mino. I don't know. Nismana sounds like it's supposed to be like a more reflexive. That he has become appointed as opposed to he was appointed.
Huh.
But there's no word in there that in the okay. Okay.
Worthy, he throws in the worthy thing. It's worthy of being appointed. That's what. Yeah.
Nismana would mean being appointed. Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef says, Kater, Keter, Kachazina Hacha. I see a conspiracy over here.
Oh.
The Amar Ravasi says, Tarkava de Danri. Tarkava is two kav, trey kav, it's a compound word. The dinri of coins. Aile Marta Baspaitas Liane Malka. Marta Baspaitas gave to Yanai. Yanai was the Hashmonai king, right? Ad Mukilel Yeshua ben Gamla Bekani Ravri, until Yeshua ben Gamla was appointed as the Kohen Gadol. He paid for it. She paid for it. Yeah, the comment, the Tosfos Yeshanim says that it can't be the same Yeshua ben Gamla as the one that the sages praise, because here it looks like he's being put down.
Martha bribed
the king.
Yeah, she paid him off.
Right.
So her husband was
It doesn't have to be a negative thing. It could be her husband was a great person. The Kohen Gadol could have been a Sadducee, and she was trying to fix the problem, not to create a problem. Or it could be she was creating a problem. But the Talmud doesn't speak bad about Martha. I don't remember anything. It's just that she was this delicate woman that had this unfortunate death. No. The role of the king. Yeah, he must have controlled that though at that point. The king. The Sanhedrin would appoint the Kohen Gadol. Yeah, but at this point during the Hashmonai period, there was a lot of corruption. The Kohen Gadol also had access to the taxes, to the shkalim. You know, there's money involved.
Yeah.
There's money involved, and there's got to be corruption.
An election.
Who was that?
Chaucer. He was running back to the Catholic Church.
Okay. Kohen Gadol Shemesa Achiv, a Kohen Gadol whose brother died. This Mishnah could have come before. It would have taught us something about this. The last Mishnah. He can't do Yibum because he would be marrying a widow. So what does he do? He does Chalitza. We had a discussion at the beginning of the Masechta that maybe the Yibum should be a mitzvah and should push off the negative command. You know, there's reason to say differently, but we didn't say that. I didn't see that anywhere. If a Kohen Gadol can step down, I didn't notice that anywhere, and it's apparently not, because I mean this itself should be a proof. You just say, well, give it up. Let someone else.
If he doesn't perform, doesn't the brother's wife get to spit on him or something like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, and that's what we're suggesting. Yeah, that he should that they should do that chalitza. The spitting.
The chalitza would be against the brother who's a high priest.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like a trivia question. Who spits on the Kohen Gadol? You know the story with the lady that came home and the husband said, "Where were you?" She said, "I was at Reb Meir's shir." He said, "I'm not letting you in the house until you spit into Reb Meir." So Reb Meir heard about it. He said, "I have a pain in my eye. Can anyone spit in my eye?" Or something, and then so anyway, okay. Kapasik Vitani, it was decisive The Mishnah was decisive when it says, Leisha min Eirsin, Leisha min Nesuin. We don't know what this widow was. We don't know if this widow was betrothed. We don't know if the widow was fully married. Now, if that's the case, then the prohibition of the Kohen Gadol marrying a widow is a negative prohibition. But he also has to marry a virgin. That's a positive command. But it could be that she still is a virgin, because it could be it was only a betrothal. And then the husband passed away. So now we have a negative prohibition that the Kohen Gadol should not marry a widow. We have a positive command that he should do the levirate marriage. So the positive should push off the negative. If there's a positive command also that he has to marry a virgin and she's not, so then it would be a positive against the positive and the negative. But here it could be that it was only a negative command because she's a widow, but she's still a virgin. So it says, if she was married to the brother, Reuven marries Leah, and it was a full marriage, so then she's not a virgin anymore. So a positive command, which is he should do the levirate marriage, is not going to push off that he doesn't have to marry a virgin and he's going to marry a widow. It's not going to push that off. But if Reuven was only betrothed to Leah, and then Reuven dies, she's still a virgin. So Shimon, the Kohen Gadol, the mitzvah of Yibam should push off the negative prohibition of not to marry a widow. The Gemara says, Gezeira bia rishona to be a shnia. We're concerned that he may perform the levirate marriage, but then not stop, and then have another relations with her, and that would be a prohibition. The mitzvah of Yibam would only be the first relations. So therefore we suggest, it's more than a suggestion, we outlaw the Yibam in that case, and we say that he has to do chalitza. Okay. Kayin hedyet layisa islandess. This is a very interesting way of putting this. So the Gemara is going to tell us that it's not necessarily the Kayin, but it says a regular Kayin should not marry a woman that's underdeveloped, that can't have children. Elam Kain yesh lo isha ubanim, unless he has another wife and children. So now it seems that the word wife is taken out by Rashi. Others, unless he has children already. If he has children already, then he can marry. Rabbi Yehuda has a very interesting opinion. He says that an islandess, which is the woman that's underdeveloped.
Could she be over the age of maturity?
Yeah, she's over the age of maturity, but she doesn't. Her body didn't develop. So at what age do we know that she's islandess? And she's a virgin. Well, if we don't at 20, then we can tell that she's an islandess.
Something about the age of 35.
Right. Oh, so
I think it's 20.
So islandess, I think, has the term an isle was a male, and I think like she's being termed that she doesn't have the female features. So she's underdeveloped. She's Zaina Mura Materet. Says this is called the Zaina that the Torah she's the Zaina that the Torah is talking about. The Gemara's got to explain this because that's not, it can't be face value. Face value, what you would think this would mean is that, oh well, she never gets pregnant from whoever she lives with, so she could have been, but that's not the explanation the Gemara is going to give us. Okay, so in a Kohen, there's not allowed to marry a Zona. Chachamim say that's not true. A Zaina is someone that had a relations that was not allowed, or she's a convert, or she's a slave woman that was freed. That's a Zaina. Why? Because those in those situations, she was in situations where people were not careful about who they lived with and all of that. So therefore, she's considered a Zaina. she came from those cultures, those societies, or if she clearly had a bilasnas, forbidden relations. Okay, so we have some things that the Gemara is going to need to clarify for us. Amali Reish Galusa Rav Huna. The Reish Galusa, the exilarch, says to Rav Huna, my taima. What's the reason for the Mishnah? A kohen is not allowed to marry an islandess, a woman that's underdeveloped. So he responded, Mishum Pirya Berivya. Oh, this is still their question. What's the reason why you're saying that? It's because a kohen is obligated to have children. It's only a kohen that is obligated to have children and not a regular Israelite. Why are you telling me a kohen is not allowed to marry an islandess, this underdeveloped woman, unless he has, what does it say? Yeah, unless he has children from another marriage, from another wife. So this is only a mitzvah on the kohen that he has to have children. So Amarlei Rav Huna responds, Mishum de Gabayil Misnei Seifa. The term kohen, that a kohen should not marry an islandess, was not really what we wanted to say in the Reisha. It's because in the Seifa, in the second part of the Mishnah, I have a statement from Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that an islandess is considered a Zaina. So we wanted to make the beginning of the Mishnah match with what Rabbi Yehuda was going to say. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says that even if he already has children, he can't marry a islandess because that's considered the Zaina. So who can't marry the islandess? That's the kohen. So the sages at the beginning, the first opinion says that if he does have children, then he can marry the islandess. They're arguing over there about the kohen, but really it's more than that. It's even a Yisrael. They're this widely mentioned kohen because they have to argue with Rabbi Yehuda that says a kohen is not allowed. They're saying a kohen is allowed, as long as there's children. But if there's no children, then it would apply even to a Yisrael. So it's really just making the Mishnah symmetrical with what Rabbi Yehuda, the exact opposite with Rabbi Yehuda. So that's why we said that. But even though they would say even more. It's only a prohibition on a kohen to marry a Zaina, not on a Yisrael. Israelite is allowed to marry a woman that's a Zaina, right? Let's say a woman commits adultery. She's married. Then the husband divorces her. Anyone can marry her. There's no prohibition. Not the person that lived with her. That would be a prohibition. But anyone else is allowed to. So it's only the kohen that would have that problem.
But they killed them both.
So Rabbi,
I'm saying if there wouldn't have been the witnesses and all of that.
so if somebody knows that a woman is sterile for whatever reason, then the person wouldn't be allowed to
They were
marry.
saying that the man has the obligation to have children.
Yeah.
So if he has another wife or he was married before, then he can marry her. And
I'm saying not an
according to
islandess,
Yehuda, then a kohen is not allowed to marry her, even if he has children.
But let's say it's like a woman who's like 60 years old or whatever the case is. There would be a prohibition on marrying if the person doesn't have children.
If he's still able to have children.
Yeah.
She's not.
What if he's divorced, had children?
If he had children already, yeah. If he had children, then it's fine. Yeah.
But if not, then no. Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone's obligated to have children.
Right.
so that's nothing.
Right. The only thing is that there's two mitzvahs going on. We're going to see soon. There's a mitzvah to be married. And there's also a mitzvah to have children. And sometimes someone, for whatever reason, they didn't have children. So they keep postponing the mitzvah to get married because they're waiting for someone that they can marry that's going to have children. And as time goes on, it gets more and more complicated. So at a certain point, they have to make a decision that they should fulfill the mitzvah of getting married, at least, and drop the extra one because it's not working out, right? Okay. Yeah, that's a rabbi's, someone's got to decide on that. Okay.
What if they got married
I think there may be an opinion that worked. We'll see it's going to be probably on the next page. It's not the simple shot. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, my time with the Rabbi Yehuda. What's the reason for Rabbi Yehuda? He's so strict about a Kohen can't marry this woman that's underdeveloped. The Ksiv, Achlu v'la yispu. They eat and they're not satisfied. Hizna v'la yifritu. There's mizana. They have relations, but they don't have children. Kol bia she'im b'pirtza ein ala bilas nas. He takes this from a pasuk in Hosea that if there's a relations that cannot lead to having children, that's considered znus, misconduct.
For anybody or just the Kohen Goy?
Which would be an issue for a Kohen.
Yeah.
Oh, for the Kohen.
Taisus over here spells it out that he says, 1 second, a child which was allowed. We even said before that he's supposed to marry someone
Good
young.
morning.
Thank God. Good morning. We're right on the top of Samech Aleph Amud Beis. So a child cannot have children. Taisa spells it out. It's only someone that would never be able to have children. Yeah. Otherwise, this would sound like if a woman's pregnant, she's not becoming pregnant again. I mean, there was such a thing in the Gemara, but so they're forbidden to have relations, or if it's not exactly when she's ovulating, she's forbidden to have relations. No, it's only a woman that would never be able to become pregnant. That's what Rabbi Yehuda is referring to. Okay, Tanya. Start in a brisa. Rabbi Eliezer Kayan layises aktana. Rabbi Eliezer says that a Kayan is not allowed to marry a ktana, a young girl. This is Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. Strong statement. Amalei Rav Chisda l'Rabba. Rav Chisda says to Rabba, Puk ayelba. You better look into this, because the Le'orta Baila Rav Huna Minach Rav Huna, the teacher, is going to ask you what this means. So look into this now. You should be able to answer. So Nafak, he goes out. Ayin Bay looks into it, and he comes back. He says, Rabbi Eliezer Savalak Rab Meir, Savalak Rab Yehuda. We're going to have 4 interpretations of the statement of Rabbi Eliezer. The first one goes like this. First one is the explanation given by Rabbah. Why does Rabbi Eliezer say that a Kayan should not marry a young girl? He says because he holds like Rab Meir and he also holds like Rab Yehuda. These are 2 opinions, and when you combine them together, you come out with this new halacha that you can't marry a katana. Why? Rab Meir, the chayish l'miuta. You know that Rab Meir, usually we're only concerned about things that are like the majority. Rab Meir is not like that. Rab Meir is concerned about minorities as well. He says you can't just make an assumption that it's probably the majority. He says no. There could be the odd. Just because the odds are not like that doesn't mean that that's not the case. Equal opportunity. So the chayish l'miuta, and what are we referring to here? Is that usually most women develop normally, and they are able to have children, but there is a miyut. There's a minority that doesn't. So until we know that the woman is going to develop, so that we have to suspect that maybe she's not going to develop. I mean, the odds are statistically that's not correct, but Reb Meir says statistics don't prove the point. It's just a statistic, which doesn't have to be. So v'savalak Reb Yehuda, and he also says like Reb Yehuda, Damar islandess zayneh, which says that it's forbidden to marry an islandess. So until we know that she's not an islandess, we have to suspect that maybe she is. So therefore, a kain is not allowed to marry a child. Gemara says, 1 second. Reb Meir misavala. I'll prove to you he doesn't hold like Reb Meir. That we have proof for this. Reb Meir is one opinion. Are you going to tell me Reb Eliezer holds like that? Reb Eliezer was older, was 2 generations earlier. But Tanya, but we have a brisa. It says like this: Reb Meir holds that a young girl and a young boy are not allowed to do chalitza. They're not allowed to do yibum. That means if the brother Reuven was married to a girl that was a minor, and then he passed away, the brother Shimon, while he's a minor, is not allowed to do but even if he's an adult, he can't do it because she's a minor.
Right.
And even if she's an adult, he can't do it because he's a minor. Okay. Reb Meir says, Reb Meir, I get what you're saying, that you can't do chalitza, because ish ksiv beparsha, it says that what's the word? What's the pasuk over there? That the man goes up to the gate. It says ish. It says the man goes up to the gate. What pasuk do they quote? Vim layachbetzish. Yeah, vim layachbetzish. If he decides that he doesn't want to marry her, so it says a man, and it's not. She's not. And he's not a man. Now, and what about the woman? We said she has to be an adult also. Makshina and Ishalish, and then we compare the man to the woman to the man. So I get why chalitza cannot be performed until they're of age of 12 and 13, I guess. Elamai time ain miyabmin. What's the reason why yibam can't be done? Why can't they just do the levirate marriage? It doesn't say man over there. Amalei katan shem yintzis katan shem timtza island simtza peigenberva. There's a concern that what's the whole point of the yibam is to create a name for the brother, which means to have a child. And it could be that the boy, the brother that's going to do the yibam is not going to develop properly. And it could be that the girl, that's the wife, is not going to develop properly. So he's not allowed to marry his sister-in-law unless it would be a case where he would be able to create the name. But if they're not going to develop properly, then the original prohibition of that a brother is not allowed to marry his sister-in-law would be in place, and the mitzvah of yibam wouldn't be there. So Reb Meir has a concern that every child, you don't know how they're going to develop, you have to wait for that. Vitanya, and it was taught in a brayso, Ketana misyabemes v'necheletzes divrei Rabbi Eliezer. And Rabbi Eliezer clearly says not like Reb Meir. Reb Meir says that they're allowed to do yibam, which means that he doesn't suspect to the minority, like Reb Meir. So basically, that's question number one, an explanation of Rabbah, why Rabbi Eliezer says that a kohen's not allowed to marry a young girl, was because he suspects to Reb Meir. We don't know what, and he expects it. Question number one is that Rabbi Eliezer doesn't suspect to Reb Meir. That we see clear. Question number two, Rabbi Yehuda misavala, and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda either. But Tanya, but we have a brayso, Zaina kishma div Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer clearly says in a brayso that a Zaina means a Zaina. It's not some other term that means underdeveloped woman. The Zaina is a woman that had committed adultery. Rabbi Kiva Imer Zaina Zum of Keres. This is where the big machlekes is. We mentioned this before. There's big machlekes. Who goes under the category of a Zaina? So Rabbi Eliezer's view is she had to commit a very serious sin, adultery. Rabbi Akiva says Zaina Zum of Keres. Rabbi Akiva says a Zaina is a woman that never says no to any man. She's just whoever wants. Ramasi ben Charish Amrafilu Halach Baila Ashkeis Abal Abeder Chasas, and Ramasi ben Charish has a more his view is like this, that she had to commit a sin, but that sin could be that even if she actually had relations with her husband when she wasn't supposed to. Why? Because the husband told her, warned her, don't be secluded with the man. And she was secluded with the man. And then they went to the Beis Hamikdash to have her drink. The rule is that he's supposed to refrain from having relations with her until that process is done. He didn't refrain, and she lived. So she becomes a Zaina because she had relations at a time then when it was forbidden. Huh? They're supposed to have people with them to make sure, yeah. Rabbi Yehuda adds in Zaina zu Eilinus. That a Zaina is a woman that's, we have to see with the explanation for that. But a Zaina is a woman that's not developed, underdeveloped. The Chum say differently. Chum say a Zaina is a woman that had a forbidden relations, or she's a convert or a slave. Rabbi Elazar, it has to be, and not Rabbi Eliezer, because we already had Rabbi Eliezer's view. We have to adjust this Gemara to Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar is Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. Rabbi Eliezer is Rabbi Elazar ben Horkanus. Rabbi Elazar Reimer Pani Abala Pnei Shleiv Shlemish Zaina. A man that's not married, or a woman that's not married, that they have relations, that's already a zaina. Any relations out of marriage. Taisus points out, why are you telling me a man that's not married with a woman? Let's say the man is married. He says that's even worse. The fact that the woman wasn't married is the issue. She wasn't married to him. That's the issue. Any relations out of marriage, she becomes a zaina. According to Rebbe Lazar, we had Rebbe Lazar before. That was question number 2. That on Rabba's view, that why does Rabbi Eliezer say that a kohen is not supposed to marry a child? Is because he holds like Reb Meir, that we suspect to the minority that maybe she's going to be underdeveloped. And he also holds like Rabbi Yehuda that says that an underdeveloped woman is a zaina and a kohen can't marry a zaina. Question number 1 is he doesn't hold like Reb Meir. He only suspects to the majority, not the. Question number 2, he doesn't hold like Rabbi Yehuda. He has his own view about who's a zaina, and it's not an underdeveloped woman. Ella Amar Rav Ada Barava. Explanation number 2. Hacha b'kayin gadol askina. We're dealing with a kayin gadol. Aha. He didn't tell us that. Rabbi Eliezer didn't say it was a kayin gadol. He said a kayin. But he says, no, we're dealing with a kayin gadol. Leimas kanila. When does the kayin gadol acquire his wife? If she'd be a child. L'chi gadla. When she matures. V'ulahi. But she's already not a virgin. We learned before that he wasn't supposed to marry a girl, even if he's the cause of her not being a virgin. Right? Remember that? So even though he married her when she was young, but the marriage would only be in effect when she matures, she's already not a virgin. So we just limited the statement of Rebbe Eliezer to being a kain gadol. So 1 second. The Gemara says, Amar Rava. Rava says to Rabba de Barava, Mikali Lev. He says this is without intelligence. If the father married her off, then that's an immediate marriage. You don't have to wait till she matures. The father is able to sell his daughter into marriage, not sell, but to give her over to marriage and take the kedushin money, and she's married for 100%. Vida kacha nafsha, and if she marries herself off, she went and got married. Her Rebbe Eliezer v'lei Rabbanan, so then it would only be Rabbi Eliezer's view and not the rabbi's view. Everyone would agree with that. Rava says we're not dealing with a kain gadol. Rebbe Eliezer meant a regular kain. She should not marry a child. Why? Because a child is easy to seduce. And maybe the child is going to be seduced by some other man, his wife. The Gemara says, that no one should marry a child. Well, it says, Pita Ketana Einasu. It's just good advice. Because if it's not a kayin, then if the girl is seduced, if she's a child, seducing a child is considered rape. There's no such thing as consent. She said yes. So that's considered rape. And now he's allowed to remain married to his wife that was raped. But a kayin is not allowed to. She becomes privileged to the husband. So we're dealing with a regular kayin, and we're saying that he shouldn't marry a child because we don't know what the child could get up to. Rav Papa Amar b'kayin gadol. Rav Papa says we go back to the teretz of Rav Ada Barava. He says we're dealing with the kayin gadol. You said that she gets married, and if the father married her off, V'haitanu d'tanya, and it's following the following brisa. It's taught in a brisa, besula. It says a kayin gadol has to marry a virgin. Yachal Ketana, maybe that means he should marry a Ketana. Tamalaimer Isha, it says no, he should take a wife, a woman. Isha Yachal Bageris, then maybe he should marry a woman that's mature. Tamalaimer Besula, it says no, she has to be a virgin. If she's mature, we said before that she's not a full virgin if she matures. Okay, Tzad, so how does this work? You're throwing back and forth. She has to be not a child, but not fully mature. So what is that? To be a nara, from in between 12 and 12 and a half. So that would be the only age. Well, that's going to create a shidduch. problem. They only have 6 months to marry for the Kohen Gadol. Okay. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, Hi Tanu de Tanya. It's following this brisa. Besula, ein besula lanara. What does it mean, a virgin? It means that she has to be 12 years old. V'cheinu oimer v'anara teivas mara ma'id. Besula. I even have a pasuk. This is by Rivka. It says that she was 12 years old. Taisa says that's not what they taught us. She told us she was 3. It says the midrashim are conflicting over here. One argument clearly holds that she was 12, but there's midrashim that say Rivka was 3. Okay, which one is right? Rabbi Elazar Reimer Pani Abala Pnei Shleish Semishta Zaina. Rabbi Elazar says that if a man that's not married or a woman that's not married, they have relations, so she becomes a Zaina. Amar Avamra Mein Alacha Rabbi Elazar. We don't pass like Rabbi Elazar. It's a very strict view. We don't follow that. Very important, because a lot of times people think the girls think that, oh, I can't marry a Kohen because she had relations with someone before she was married. It's not true. We don't pass like Rabbi Elazar. She's allowed to marry a Kohen, unless the person was someone that she was forbidden to have relations with. For example, someone that she would not have been allowed to marry, like a non-Jew or something.
But then she wouldn't be a virgin.
She wouldn't be a virgin, but there's no one marrying a Kohen Gadol today. It's just a Kohen.
Right, that's true.
So it'd be fine. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Because this whole Gemara is like blowing my mind. Up until this point, I had saintly people of these generations were so saintly, and now pedophilia, prostitution. I mean, just all these possibilities. Like going back just to the basic concept of evil, that man who died, who you need to be miyapin his wife because she had no children. What if he had one of these relations that we're talking about, all these relations, and a child was born from one of those relations? So then he actually had a child.
Right.
So why would they have to be miyapin his wife?
No, they wouldn't have to. I don't think. I think that's considered that he had a child.
So if he had they find out he had an illegitimate child in the other town.
Right.
They just do chalitza.
Yeah.
Was the other child considered illegitimate? Wasn't.
Well, either yes or no. It could be he had a marriage somewhere else. Yeah, there's no Yevamos Daf. No, there's nothing. Right.
Beat that.
Right.
This is getting more and more.
Ready? Next Mishnah. Lo yevatel adam miperi v'rivial im ken yesh lebanim. Person should always not neglect the mitzvah of being fruitful and multiplying, unless he already has children. What does that mean? He already has children. Bishamay says 2 male children. Yeah, there's a discussion if that means that it needs to be 2 male or it could be. Basil says a male and a female. As it says in the Torah that Hashem created man and woman. Okay. Okay.
This mitzvah is only for Jews.
We're going to see soon. Not necessarily. Let's say he does have children. You see, it's interesting. It didn't say that if he has children, unless he has children. It didn't say that he can stop being married once he has children. It only says he can stop having children once he has children. Messiah Leila Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. This seems to support, the fact that what it didn't say seems to support what Rav Nachman says in the name of Shmuel. The Amar Afa Pishesh Adam Kama Bana Masalamed Blayisha, even though a man has many children, but he should always be married. Shenemar Laitay V'Yes Adam Levadai. It's not good for a man to be alone.
Is this bringing this down as a minhag or a halacha? This statement.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I could guess, but that's not what you're looking for. Guess that it's a halacha, but not always does the Gemara tell me things like this as a halacha. I mean, sometimes the Gemara is telling me, how much money to spend on shoes, or something. Doesn't mean that that's exactly, sometimes things are agadata, they're okay. Those that say some say it's the opposite. That if he has children, then he doesn't have to be married. Name it to the Rab Nachman Amar Shmuel. That's a question on Rab Nachman Amar Shmuel. Gemara says, no. Ein leibanim, noisi isha. If he doesn't have children, he has to get married basbanim. He has to marry a woman that's capable of having children. Yeish leibanim, if he already has children. Noisi isha delav basbanim. He gets married to a woman that's even if she's not capable of having children, she's older, whatever. Nafkamina. Besides for that basic nafkamina, that what filters he puts on his shidduchim requests. Besides for that, it's also limker sefer Torah b'shvil banim. There's a mitzvah to get married and have children, and if he can't find a wife, he's actually allowed to sell a sefer Torah to be able to afford whatever, to travel or whatever it takes to be able to marry a woman. But here, because he already has children, he can't sell a sefer Torah. He could marry a woman that's already older, because he already has children. Yeah, that could be.
Trust me.
Okay.
I'm without.
Beishamai says two males. My time at the Beishamai, the Gemara says, what's the reason for Beishamai? Where do you get that from? It says, Yalfinam ne Moshe, our greatest. Diksiv b'nei Moshe, Gershom ve'Eliezer. It's good enough for Moshe. It's good enough for us. He's separated from his wife. He did. How could he separate from his wife? Well, he had a special reason. We'll see. But if he didn't fulfill the mitzvah, how could he have separated from Beis Hillel? What about Beis Hillel? They learned from the creation of the world. Well, Beishamai what happened? Creation of the world. That means that Hashem made Adam and Chava. Why doesn't Beishamai learn from that? That seems like a good. It says Ein dan an efsher mishi'i efsher. Over there, Hashem needed to create a male and female, but now not every person needs to create a male and female. This person can have two males. Someone else will have two females. It doesn't.
If they have two males, then so it could have a female.
Yeah, but the purpose, you can't say that. Beishamai is saying you can't say that I have to copy what God did, because that was a case where God needed to do that. Now it's not necessary.
Yeah, statistically, if you have to have two males, you end up going to having females also 50% of the time.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but the Torah doesn't say, right, when women are born. It doesn't talk about the sisters of the tribes.
Right. It doesn't talk about that. Now, that's just because the Torah doesn't give me the names of every every single detail. It's not necessarily telling me the how the world developed and all of that. And
So Moshe could have had girls.
tell me. I'm sorry.
Moshe could have had girls also. Just the Torah didn't
I
mention
see what you're saying. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, what sounds like from this though was that Beishamai would accept if someone had two girls, but they don't say that.
But Adam and Eve also weren't born; they were
Created,
Yeah,
formed,
yeah.
right? But we're learning from that's what's considered procreating. Beisil Nami Lel from Moshe. Why doesn't Beisil learn from Moshe? Moshe had two boys. Amalach Moshe midaiti David. Moshe had his own reason for this. What was that? The Tanya was taught in the Brisa. Shleisha Devara Masa Moshe midaiti v'skima daite l'dasa makim. Moshe did three things, and on his own initiative, and Hashem was maskim, was consented that it was good. What happened? First of all, he separated from his wife. Second thing is Shibra Saluchas, he broke the tablets. And Vayisif Yem Echad, by the giving of the Torah, he added one extra day before the Torah was given. He told them to separate, and the Torah was given a day later than it needed to have been. Hashem consented to that. First Isha, my Darsh, where did he get this from? Amar, he said like this: "Amar Yisrael shalei dibri mam shchinel afi shav kavalem esman amra teir al tikshol isha anishim yochel ledib b'chol shav shal lekavali esman alachas kama v'kama." If when Hashem spoke to the people, which was at the giving of the Torah, they had to separate from their wives, and that was a set time. So for me, I don't know when Hashem's going to speak to me. I have to separate. And it was correct. Why? Because Hashem says, let them go back to their tents after the giving of the Torah, but you stay with me. It meant that Hashem agreed that he was going to separate from his wife. Yeah, I guess I'll stop over here by the second one. Okay. Yeah. Right.
It's family, but